I'm Spencer.
And I'm Matt.
And this is a Sidekick podcast on The Mandalorian. And it starts right now. All right, Matt. Disney Plus released The Mandalorian. We finally have it in our hands. We're going to be talking about the first episode tonight, which was called Chapter 1. I didn't see like an actual title to this episode, did you?
I didn't either. No, I didn't even know there were chapters or titles until I watched the second one.
Right. So, the first episode, I got to tell you, we talked about this and we had a discussion on the main podcast, but I really wanted to talk about this more and really like dig into this because there was so much going on, and I rewatched it with Brita. Brita didn't actually watch it with me when I watched it the first time.
Okay.
So I got to go back and say I made a criticism about The Mandalorian that I felt like that it needs music that is something that really like hones us into this is the Star Wars universe. Can I just tell you that I'm 1,000% wrong and I'm okay with the fact that I'm wrong?
Yeah, you can. And I agree.
I'm wrong.
Yeah.
That I went back and I've been literally like humming the music to this show like in my head for a few days now.
Right.
So I think, okay, so first of all, like this is like literally, and we talked about this before, but like literally this is supposed to be a Western in space, even though it's a bounty hunter. But like the whole idea is like he's a lone gunman, he's out on his own, he's like trying to like survive. But like it is literally like a Western in space.
Yeah.
Which, you know, makes me kind of think of Serenity a little bit, but like that's totally kind of a different realm. But oh gosh, music. Like where are you at on this music?
It's awesome.
I'm wrong. I'm loving it now. Yeah,
and
okay.
I think we kind of got a little bit of more of the bombastic Star Wars stuff kind of toward the end. If you like, the credit music is really, really great. The credits,
Yes.
Just a shout out to the credits, the art being in the credits. I'm a big fan of like concept art for Star Wars, especially. So what I've loved, what's been happening with the new movies is we get an art book on the day that the movie releases. And I've been collecting all the art books for the I think there's 4 films that have been released so far. So to see them at the end of The Mandalorian with this really great Star Wars Western inspired music, I was like, dang, this is pretty cool. Like I might actually watch credits. I don't normally watch credits, but this was awesome. And the music, I thought it was perfect. You can tell. I don't know. It's
something I picked up on a second watch, because how many times have you seen the first episode now?
I think I've seen it twice.
I've seen it twice, and something I didn't. So the first time I watched it through, I was like watching it just to kind of like, I don't know, soak it in. Maybe not paying as much attention to some of the details, just because I just wanted it so bad. But on the second watch through, when I watched with my wife, I noticed that every time the Mandalorian like gets first introduced in the episode, you hear the little motif, the musical motif, the do 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 do, kind of like it's almost played on some sort of like wind instrument.
Yes,
and it reminds me of the
yes. Totally.
It's literally like the Star Wars version of that.
Totally. It was
so good.
I loved the music. I thought that it handled both being a Star Wars like music and a Western inspired music. I thought it was really, really well done.
Yeah.
No complaints from me on the music. Good job.
Music and score in Star Wars movies are literally a whole character unto themselves.
Yeah.
And I wrongfully said that I thought it needed more Star Warsiness. And after a rewatch, I went, no, like this is perfect. It gives you the feeling of a Western. It gives you a feeling of like he's a lone man out on his own.
Isolation, kind of.
Yeah.
It's cool.
And I went, you know what? I don't need this to be flashy and big, huge like themes that build that are gonna like move me. Like I like the fact that it makes me feel kind of calm and like alone and
Totally.
So freaking good.
Yep. Really good. Really good.
Brian Posen. I love the fact that Brian Posen, who's like this kind of comedy guy, but like uber nerd, like he's kind of all, he's always kind of like these nerdy things. He actually got to get a role in this show as the little, I don't know what you call him, like little taxi driver.
Oh,
that gets eaten.
That guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
I loved that. Especially also because he got on Twitter and was like, look, I'm finally in Star Wars. And was like totally geeking out over that. I love that.
That whole scene, there's so many things that we could talk about The Mandalorian that I loved. That whole beginning sequence, though, where we're kind of trying to figure out what we're getting into and, learning about, we knew this was a bounty hunter, so we're not surprised by that. But, the whole, he's not talking, his helmet never comes off, he gets the bounty, they just walk out to this sheet of ice, literally, it's a sheet of ice, and this dude with this crazy mouth nose thing plays this flute, and I was like, this is so Star Wars. This is so awesome. It's this like Uber taxi service. And I just think, the one when he pulls out with the droid, he's like, basically you can see it on his face, even though he doesn't have a face, which is a testament to how well the character is portrayed, in my opinion.
Right.
I'm not impressed with droids. Like, I don't trust him. He's like an old school guy, very analog. He's like, don't trust it, don't want it, don't need a droid. I need a person. And then he shows up in this beater.
Parts are falling off it.
Oh, it's like exploding. It's like, it's classic. This guy shows up in like an old, truck with the exhaust blowing out. And that's what this is, the equivalent of that. I thought it's just so cool to get these little hints about who the character is, and then the lived in Star Wars feel. I was very impressed with how quickly I was taken back into Star Wars and how excited I got that, oh my gosh, I'm watching new Star Wars in my house,
right? In
a serialized television version. What's this going to be like? Live action.
How did you feel about that first fight scene?
It was way more brutal than I thought it was going to be. With the way that guy was sliced in half by the door, which I was into. I was glad that we got some like dark brutality.
Well, it's cool because like I think it would speak to like the character, right? Like he's going to use anything that's available to him, which he had the ability to chop a guy in half by, shooting the controls of the door, forcing it to close, and getting that air seal. And he doesn't have to then like finish the fight with that guy because he's got other guys to worry about.
Yep.
I liked it. Brita she kind of like got a little squeamish and kind of cringed and looked away. She's like, no. Oh, I was like, yeah.
Yes.
But of course, it being Star Wars and it being on Disney Plus, you just see some like legs drop. Like you're not going to see blood squirting everywhere. It wasn't like graphic in that sense.
Not at all. It was cool.
I liked it though. I just thought that first fight scene really was like, it was rough and tumble, man. It was just like, this would be how it would go down if he's fighting off a few guys in a bar.
Yep. Perfect way, I feel like, to set the tone that, this is going to be a Western style Star Wars series that's going to be a little, a little darker than maybe what the core series is.
Yeah.
For the most part, especially when you look at the prequels, right? It's darker than that stuff. And I'm here for it, obviously. And I think all the Star Wars fans over the age of 13 are probably saying, okay, this is a cool Star Wars thing. Like, I can get behind this.
Right.
So that was awesome.
What did you think of the whole, he's going to have to take a job for like a former Imperial officer? Like that whole kind of subplot that was there.
Yeah. Well, I think that becomes the plot, sort of, right?
Right.
Where he goes in and talks to that. Yeah. I think here's the deal. There's some things I loved about The Last Jedi, and Benicio del Toro, is that the guy who plays, is that his name? Benicio del Toro, the guy who plays the guy who switches sides and turns them in.
The slicer.
His character, where he's like, hey, there's no good, there's no bad. Who's going to pay me more? This is what the arms dealers do, kind of a thing. Like,
right.
Like, hey, it depends on your perspective. And that's the Mandalorian. He doesn't have any allegiances, really. I mean, he's got his clan, right? Obviously, he's a Mandalorian, so he is true only to the Mandalorian clan. And hey, if the Empire's going to pay me, I'll take a job. And I obviously I like the fact that he's willing to do anything, but I find it interesting that now we know 5 years after the fall of the Empire that there are still fragments of the Empire still operating with what appears to be real stormtroopers and real officers and like a real doctor that are trying to continue to get information about the Force and continue to get information about the galaxy, that they're still operating in some capacity.
Which, I mean, makes sense, right? The second Death Star blows up over Endor. That doesn't mean like it's over. It just means that this big super weapon and most of the military leadership and the head of the Empire and his right-hand man, yes, are all gone, but there's still going to be stuff, which is interesting because that concept was addressed in some of the books that came in the early mid-90s that are now considered, the legends. They used to be canon. But like that idea of like the fledgling empire on the run, the new republic had been addressed. But now this is the first time in any canon now, since Disney's acquired Lucasfilm.
Yep.
This is the first time that anything that's canon has kind of addressed this period right after Endor, a few years after. And I think this is great because you're right. They wouldn't just like up and like roll up the carpet like, well, I guess the Death Star is gone, so
right.
No more Palpatine. I guess we're all good guys now. Like, no, that wouldn't be the way.
Yep. And I just and we'll talk. I mean, there's so many things that we could talk about, but I love the reason that we get such a cool. I feel like look at the Mandalorian, who he is, and his lack of speaking. I'll just say his lack of dialogue.
Yep.
We get this really cool character in this field because this is a serialized television show. If this were in a movie, you can't draw out the scenes the same way. You can't have him have these long episodes of silence and getting into the nitty-gritty of his ship and exploring all the different parts of his story. That's what I love. I mean, I can already tell that's what I'm going to love about these next serialized version of Star Wars is we think we know Luke Skywalker, and we do because we know him over several films, but we're going to have more time with this Mandalorian than any of the characters in any of the trilogies because we get this specific look at this point in time of everything that's happening. It was very exciting to... I don't know, for a Star Wars fan to really get a really good look into the galaxy. It's like playing a video game and being able to spend as much time as you want somewhere, except it's canon. It's right there. It's real. It's so cool.
Well, and I also think that like Jon Favreau, who wrote the episode, and Dave Filoni, who directed it, who also has been kind of like one of like the leading guys on the Star Wars front with Clone Wars and Rebels and just, Mandalorian now and a bunch of other stuff, is that like they also knew that like they needed to drop in a bunch of like little maybe Easter eggs for Star Wars fans. So like obviously the ship, which is what's that called? It's called the Razor's Crest, I think.
It's something crest. Yeah, I think
it's Razor's Crest or something like that. Anyway, like that ship is like it's pre-Empire, but like if you look at it, that's straight out of like Attack of the Clones.
Right.
And not only that, so it's like, oh, cool, here's a ship that you should recognize if you saw the prequels. But then inside the ship is the carbonite freezing technology that was shown at, in Bespin on Cloud City from Empire Strikes Back.
Yep.
And so it's like, just like those like little things there. Of course, like the Mandalorian armor and the grapple ability and the fire, like, those are things we saw Boba Fett have in episodes 5 and 6. So, like, there's like little things here. The character of, and I'm probably going to butcher the name, Kuil, the Ugnaught that the Mandalorian talks to when he's on the planet and he's trying to like learn how to ride the, what are they called? The Blurg, right?
Yeah.
He's trying to teach him to ride. Like, at first I kind of went, he kind of looks like an Ugnaught, but not exactly like the Ugnaughts that we saw in episode 5, Empire Strikes Back. It looked a little differently, but I really kind of liked it though. Like maybe not like a reimagining, but maybe just like we have maybe better makeup and prosthetic technology now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was interesting too, because when we went through the credits and it said Nick Nolte, Rita says, "Where's Nick Nolte?" I said, "He was that Ugnaught on the planet." And she went, "Oh,
yeah.
I didn't even catch that." And I went,
Yeah. It was funny. After watching that episode the second time, I caught that the blue guy at the beginning, his first bounty that we see.
Yeah.
He mentions, so he had the comedy's great too so far.
Yeah.
I mean, in this episode, there's some moments of great comedy when he talks about how he has to go to the bathroom. His version of going to the bathroom, which is like molting and like,
and I was like,
how
have you ever seen someone,
is.
Evacuate his thorax?
Yeah, that's so funny. So funny. I mean, the Mandalorian knows what's going on, and we as viewers, of course, know what's going on. He's just making an excuse to go down and explore. And he talks about how excited he is to get back home for Life Day, which is a shout out to the Christmas special.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it, love it or hate it. There's some shout outs to the Christmas special too. I mean, his modified weapon is straight out of the cartoon they showed during the holiday special. The zapping ability of it that he uses in the first episode to get that ice creature off of his ship.
Right.
So there's some love being thrown to the holiday special, in addition to all these other little Easter eggs that you continue to find. Obviously, there's shout-outs to, or not shout-outs, but homages to the cantina scene at the beginning, where he's kind of getting a fight in what appears to be similar to a cantina. And there are lots of fun little things, like you said. These guys are big Star Wars fans, both of them. At least, the ones that we credit with the first episode. They're huge. It just makes me smile.
Yeah. I thought it was so good. I gotta say, the whole, learn to ride the blurg
blah
scene, I kind of went, okay, this is dragging a little bit, kind of what's the point?
Yep.
But then I read something online over the weekend, and someone said that scene was actually kind of good for character development, because the Ugnaught kind of reminds them, you can't do this. Your clan, your family, you learned how to do this and learned how to do that. Really kind of stokes the fire of the Mandalorian pride a bit.
Yeah.
And then of course that's what kind of gets him to go. And so you realize that there's going to be probably pride is going to drive the character some. The idea of responsibility to his clan is going to keep, propelling him forward. And so I kind of on a second watch, it wasn't as bad. The first time I kind of felt eh.
Yeah, there's still I have some problems with the CG in that scene too, a little bit. And the weightlessness of the blurg versus him kind of falling off of it. It felt a little flat to me. That's the only time that I would complain about kind of the animation, the CG, and the implementation of that into live action. That's the only time where I thought this is a little bit cartoony. We're not as bad as episodes 1 or 2 yet, but
right.
I agree. That's the only part on my first watch through of the episode where I thought, okay, what's next? Instead of enjoying the moment, it was okay, I get it. He can't write it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
But then when he does figure out to write it, and when he gets to the what next, because I did kind of feel that too, right? We freaking get to see an IG bounty droid and talk about comedy. Every time I've seen in any depiction, whether it's this show, whether it's some video games where I've seen an IG bounty droid, they're always funny. Either they're evil funny, where they're come with me, meat bag,
right?
That kind, or it's this IG-11, which, by the way, fun fact, voiced by
Taika
Waititi.
Yeah.
Who directed Thor Ragnarok and also was the voice of Korg.
Yes.
So, I instantly, I recognized his voice. I'm oh, there we go.
Yep.
There's my boy. But a lot of humor, man. A lot of the whole, it was I've initiated self-destruct. He's like, no, we're going to shoot our way out. He's like, okay. And then the next thing he looked over, he's like getting ready to initiate self-destruct. Like, he had to stop him like 4 different times.
Yes.
I love the fact that Favreau wrote this to try to play up on the whole, like, droids are kind of the default comedian in the Star Wars universe. Mm-hmm. Like, he didn't try to make it over the top like they did in Solo, where you had this, like, very... The droid in that was, like, very much like, I'm going to do this, and I have my own agenda, and I'm gonna da-da-da-da-da. They kind of, like, you kind of got to the, like, okay, let's just come let's move this on a little bit. But more of just the, I'm following my programming.
Right.
And my programming's kind of ridiculous right now because there's a way out of this, but my programming says I have to blow myself up.
Yep.
And everyone around me.
Right.
I loved it.
It was awesome. And he's kind of a bad A mofo. I mean, that guy was killing. He took no problem. He probably got 15 of those guys down at least.
Standing out in the open.
Oh, yeah. It's like his body is spinning one direction, his head the other way. And it's like, now this is a battle droid.
Right. Yeah.
Let's.
Roger. None of that.
No.
Yeah.
They look pathetic. Give me a break.
Trade Federation droids compared to bounty droid.
Right.
Bounty droid all day.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I agree with everything you said. Very well voiced, very well acted, super funny, engaging. Kind of it had that buddy moment with these two that are temporarily teaming up. You kind of hope inside, you're like, I hope they team up forever because they're so funny together and this is going to be great. And then that doesn't happen.
No. I got to say, like, the way they jump on that big cannon and then shoot everyone down, I was like, yes!
Yes.
And then, of course, like, they look at the door and, after they try, and he just kind of like cocks his helmet a little bit. And I was like, oh, we all know what's happening.
Yep.
And then boom, 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 the door drops. And what's cool is, like, it's backlit, and so, like, it's dark on their faces and all the thing, and the door just falls in. It looked very much like a Western, like, we just kicked the doors open to the saloon.
Right.
Now we're getting ready to walk in.
Right. That's a good point.
Super Western at that moment. I was like, this is freaking awesome.
Yes.
And then we get this moment, right, where they find their quarry.
Yeah.
And this is the big shock. This was the big twist. This is the thing that, like, people have been up in arms about because I've seen about 1,000 different Facebook, articles and people talking about this. We get a species, a little alien that's actually the 50-year-old alien. People are referring to this thing as Baby Yoda because, for lack of a better term, because there is no species associated with Yoda. Which, admittedly, there's only 2 species we've seen, Yoda and Yaddle, who was in episode 1.
Right.
Both of them Jedi Masters. And so, of course, we're going to have to assume that this thing, if the Empire's after this little baby Yoda, the Empire's after it, why are they after it?
Right.
They've got to know something.
Definitely. And it's interesting because it's the doctor scientist that kind of wants the creature living.
Right.
The main bounty giver, I don't even know what to call him or what his name is.
He had
his
a
character name. But anyway.
Just the client, I guess.
Yes, they're the client guy.
The client.
He's like, take it dead or alive. I don't really care. I get bounty hunting as a whatever he says in that cool accent he's got. A curious business or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the doctor's like, no, we want this thing alive. So they got to do some study on it? I don't know. But I don't want him to bring it back to that guy alive.
No.
Of course not.
No. The other thing, too, is that I don't know how much you've been on the internet this week. A lot of people were trying to, like, make connections to say, like, oh, there's a patch on that scientist's arm that looks exactly like the patch from episode 2 from the Camino cloning.
Yeah.
And so people are speculating. I don't know if this is true or not.
Of course.
But they're speculating that they understand that this species maybe is extremely strong in the Force, and so that they may try to use it to, do some cloning. Because the cloning technology, like, we know that clones stopped being used at some point, but like Camino wasn't firebombed. The planet still existed. You know, I always got the impression from Star Wars for a long time that we used clones and then they were maybe viewed as like, you know, for moral reasons, you know, we outlawed cloning abilities.
Right.
But we don't actually really see any of that in the canon of Star Wars universe. But it just kind of stops and no one really talks about it why. And they talk about, you know, fighting during the Clone Wars and this and that. So maybe these scientists are secretly still trying to, you know, forge forward with cloning technology.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly something to be said about that because they're right. The patches match up. I mean, I've seen the pictures and there certainly could be something connecting all of that together. And we know that Dave Filoni in particular, but Jon Favreau as well, I'm sure, Dave Filoni has done specifically a lot of work during that period of Star Wars.
Yep.
That's been his focus, is right there for years. And so it wouldn't surprise me if he was kind of wanting to explore that same era of Star Wars in a different era. I know that sounds stupid to say era in different eras, but that I wouldn't put it past him. It kind of makes some sense. Now I don't know. There are some people who are saying that Yoda is a clone, or Yoda was cloned, and this is Baby Yoda is Yoda. I've seen that as well. In addition to them wanting to kind of break down his or her, I guess we don't know if this is a Baby Yoda boy or Baby Yaddle or Yadel or whatever her name was, but kind of break down the DNA and do some extracting and cloning there as well. So. We shall see.
As long as we don't have to hear about midichlorians, I'm okay.
You know what? I think we're past it. I think as long as George Lucas isn't involved, I think we're gonna be okay.
Midichlorian free.
God.
This Sidekick podcast is midichlorian free.
That's how we should start it.
Right, exactly. There's a couple other things. So, like, if you go and you look at the character list and the actors, like, there's a lot of people that we know are going to be in this series that are not in this first episode. Like literally this first episode maybe had like 4 or 5 characters.
Right.
I mean it's the it's the client, the scientist, it's the Mandalorian, it's the Ugnaught, it's the baby, it's the droid, and it's
Carl Weathers for like 5 minutes.
Right, yeah, exactly right. It's Carl Weathers. It's the Grief Karga, the bounty hunter guild guy, right?
Yeah.
Like that, I counted. That's like 7 characters, and like there's supposed to be like a whole bunch of other like bigger, bigger.
There's main characters that they've like talked about. Like let's bring like isn't there like a wrestler who's playing a character?
A former UFC fighter.
Oh, okay.
Gina.
Yes, Gina.
Carana.
She's supposed to be like a major character. Like you see her in all the promo work.
Yeah, we haven't seen her yet.
Who are you and what's your role? We don't know. Right. So yeah, this was very cool, very introductory. It's a surprise. And I love, there are some things that I really love about binging a show, obviously. Yeah. But there's a whole different thing about the way that this is making me feel. The anticipation to the next episode each week and being able to talk to you about it now each week and our thoughts and where we think this next episode might go. And it's well done, Disney. I'm loving this format already, this weekly format, rather than just release it all at once. It's great. Yeah.
Well, the other thing too is it gives people time to have that water cooler moment and to talk about it, right? Because it's going to release on Fridays. People are going to watch it over the weekend. Then they're going to talk about, like, I talked about it with probably like 4 different people today on we're recording on Sunday at church. Yeah. I was at church today and I talked with about like 4 other people. I mean, it also kind of helped. I was wearing a Star Wars tie and Star Wars socks. So I was kind of like advertising like, hey, I'm open to talk about Star Wars stuff.
Right.
But yeah, seriously though, like we have this opportunity now to talk about it for a week. Then the next episode comes out. It's that serialized formula that like we kind of do miss in the world we live in now with big shows, because everything's serialized. It's like, oh, Stranger Things released, but they drop the whole series immediately and it's done.
And you can't read anything on the internet, right? Because you're like, oh, I'm only on episode 7. I've used 7 hours of my time, but they're talking about episode 12 and I'm not there yet. And it's like, gosh, what spoilers can't I read? Now there's no question, right? Oh, I'm caught up. I used my 30 minutes and I watched The Mandalorian today, and now I can read anything I want because there's no spoilers.
Yes, I love that.
Yep.
All right, first episode, I gotta say, as far as the first episode goes, I think I really just love it. It really clicks on a lot of levels. I only had 1 or 2 small little gripes.
Yep.
And that happened to be about the pacing. But there was some little information about the Mandalorians and their clans and the Beskar Steel and things that were dropped out that weren't fully explained, but just enough to kind of get the ball rolling. And I think we're going to have time to see a real true story develop and unfold before us in a way that we don't get with the movies anymore. It's got to be in your face with the movies.
I agree. I would, I'm going to rate all these episodes because I make the rules here. And
Sure.
I will give this one kind of like we did on the main podcast, kind of a letter grade. And I'm going to stick with my A-. It's a great episode. It is so good. So many great things, very few flaws. I'm excited.
I'm going to go with you. I'm going to give it an A- as well. I mean, we kind of did this on the main podcast because we talked about it. But this episode specifically, I will give an A-. I think I've changed my reasoning why. Before it was I needed more Star Wars-y music.
Right.
Now it's more just a little bit of the pacing in kind of like that middle part, just a little bit. Could have been tightened up a little bit, but
Agree.
I reversed my opinion on the music thing. The music is great. It's amazing. No problems there.
Beautiful. All right. A-.
All right. A-. That's it. We'll come back with episode 2. I have spoken.